I was born in Clarksville, Tennessee. My family moved up here when I was 5 years old. We moved over to University Park when I was 5. We moved into Oski the summer between my 4th and 5th grade year, so I've always kind of been in the area. I graduated from Oski in 2005. Right after I graduated, I got right into a professional career. I've worked for most of the HVAC companies around here. I spent 2.5 years as the building official for the city of Oskaloosa, and currently I'm over at Mahaska Health Partnership over in facilities, over doing maintenance over there.
All right. And the next most obvious question I'm going to ask you is, why would you want to run for city council?
You know, I get that a lot. 4 years ago when I ran, you know, people would ask me that question, and I really had to struggle with it. And I thought to myself this time, and I was kind of hesitant on running this time. And then I thought, you know, I spent 2.5 years as the building official, and I got the chance to make a lot of relationships, and I got the chance to mature a lot in 2.5 years. And I got kind of the inside scoop of what's working, what's not working. You know, there was a lot of stuff that I did that made no sense, but it was the adopted code. And finally, it just kind of came down to, I'm a policy enforcer, not a policy maker. Well, now I have the chance to run for council and become a policy maker and correct some of those silly policies that we have. And then on the flip side of things, you know, I love the community. I'm married. I've been married for 8.5 years. I have a 7-year-old son. My wife teaches at Oski Elementary. So I'm invested in the community, and I want to do everything I possibly can to make the community a better place for my kids in the future.
Okay. And we're going to kind of get into some of those. We'll get to the code part of it, because that's been a major part of this discussion and all of this. But we're going to kind of go to some of the infrastructure talk. You know, there's roads, there's early childhood development, and of course the airport. We'll start with roads first.
Mm-hmm.
And how would you take the direction of the roads, and do you think the city's going the right way? How do we fund it? You know, really in your mind, what's your vision for the roads in Oskaloosa?
Funding is always the number one question. Roads are very, very expensive, especially if you want to do them correctly the first time. And that's what I really want to emphasize. You know, in the forum, you know, the comment was made by someone, well, we're putting a new road in just to get a new road in, otherwise we can't get it in, you know, if we do the infrastructure underneath of it. Well, the road probably failed because of the infrastructure underneath of it. So all we're doing is we're going to put that road in, spend a whole bunch of money, and then in a few years we're going to rip that road back out, and we're going to install the infrastructure that should have been done the first time, and then install the new road. Meanwhile, we're inconveniencing all the citizens twice when we could have done it once. I would much rather wait an extra year to do that road, you know, and patch it for that extra year to get that funding in place to do the full depth reconstruction on it. Do sub-base, do your drain tiles, do your storm water, your water, and your sewer underneath of it. That way we're done with it for 30 years, 30, 40 years. We shouldn't have to tear that road back up again. I think the city has done a really good job of maintaining a budget, but at the same point in time, they cut the street funding from $1.5 million down to $750,000. There are no new road reconstruction projects slated for the next 5 years based on the funding that the council has allotted. You know, you're going to see, you know, your chip seal, which I think should go away. You're going to see some curb and gutter, which needs to be done, but we're going to put brand new curb and gutter on a crap street. That's silly. So we need to look at a very long-term project for getting rid of all of our seal coat roads. And when we are doing the seal coat roads, we need to go in, we need to fix the sub-base, and we need to do all the infrastructure underneath of it. We need to do a long-term project to better our city. We've got to fix what we have currently and then expand on that one. You know, you look at the Lacey complex, you know, there's a nice street going out there, but to get to that one street, you got to drive over some really cruddy streets. And that's not really good representation of anyone coming to our community to have to drive over those cruddy streets to get, oh, hey, look, there's a nice street next to a nice complex. That's not what we want to be. Like, oh, we're just going to highlight one area of our town at a time. We need to work all the way through our town.
Early childhood development's going to be one that is going to be a fairly costly, substantial project for the city of Oskaloosa. What are your thoughts about that? Do you have any concerns about that project going forward?
The one concern I did have was I don't like using taxpayer monies to fund a private entity. I don't know how it all has evolved. I've been out of that discussion for a while now, as far as the Y coming in and running it, an aspect like that. And I don't know if they're leasing it from us, or I don't know that relationship. I do, however, believe that we need more substantial recreation around Oski, and I touched on that before. You know, you look at Edmondson Park. It's a beautiful, beautiful campus out there. I mean, just acres of rolling green fields. You got disc golf, and you got the swimming pool, and you got the wooden playground. The bad thing is that we don't have any money truly allotted to the Parks and Rec department in our city. And so if you go out to Edmondson Park, I think you're going to be appalled. You know, they've let it go for so long because they haven't allotted any money to it that, you know, the boards are broken out there, the ceiling, the staining on it is just crap, and it looks just run down. You know, the Parks Department last year, I believe, and the Streets Department went out and dug out all the wood chips and replaced all the wood chips, and that was a partnership with the city and B&B Bedding. That's a wonderful partnership to have. However, that was just kind of like a one-and-done type thing, but no other real money was allotted to rebuilding Edmondson Park. The rec center, I think, could be a great asset to our community. I think it needs to be done. We don't have a lot to do in the winter months. It's Iowa, it's cold, it's snowy, we need somewhere inside to go. I mean, we've got the PAC, and I think that's underutilized. I mean, it's a William Penn building, but I think it could be utilized a little bit more. We've got a whole bunch of facilities in town, and I don't know if anyone truly knows what we have and what they can do for our citizens. So I really hope that the rec center, when it comes into place, comes down to we promote the crap out of it. We just promote it. This is what it can do. You know, it's going to have this, and this. This is what it's going to cost. Be very straight up front with everything about it, and just promote it. And hopefully we can do a spin on it, and we can do something that no other community around us has. So that way we drag people in from Pella or from Ottumwa to our community because we have something they don't have. You know, I'm guilty of it myself. I'll go, you know, to the Grinnell pool, or my wife's gone to the Pella pool because they have more amenities at that pool than what we have currently, and it's more fun for our kids. So I think it's going to be a positive. I just hope that when it gets put into fruition, that it's done in a very clear and concise way that will make it last. And I hope that we're going to plan on, you know, they talk about sustainability of the project, but I hope that that's also including all the infrastructure that goes with the project, not just, oh, we've got to mow the grass and, you know, do stuff like this. You know, in 10, 15 years, do we have enough money allotted to change out all the HVAC units? Do we have all that stuff that's maybe not thought of? Hopefully they've accounted for all of that. So that way, when it comes down to 10, 15 years down the line and everyone goes, oh, shoot, there's a whole bunch of stuff wrong with this building. Okay, let's just let it go because we don't have the money. And I think that's kind of what's happened with Edmondson and Edmondson Park is, you know, it was all redone and it was a beautiful facility. And I've heard that, you know, they're going to try to put some money back into it. I think it might be a little too late. I think it might be too far gone to rehab it and not make it look run down. I think you're just trying to maintain the run down look of it. And I think we need to focus on bringing the gems of our city back up to the full gem that it was when it was built. So
there's not an election in Oskaloosa without a talk about an airport. So if you were elected to the city council, would you still support that airport and give us your explanation for either yes you do or no you don't?
I would support it with some caveats on it. I believe in doing anything that can move our city forward. And everyone's kind of, oh, well, it's only going to benefit Pella. And, you know, and it, like I said, it probably will benefit Pella a little bit more than us on the manufacturing side of it because they have Pella Corp, they have Vermeer. But it does not mean that we should not partner with our surrounding communities. You know, if we're being complacent, we're dying. we've got to look at forward thinking. If we can do this, and I'm hoping that it spurs economic development. Whether it be in Pella or Mahaska County or Oskaloosa or surrounding area, I really hope that it does spur some development. On the other side of it, the big talk with the airport is the eminent domain issue. I understand where the federal government's coming from on having the eminent domain language in the contracts, because you don't want to have a whole bunch of federal money tied up to a project you can never bring to fruition. So I understand it from that standpoint. However, I think hopefully the track record of Oski should prove that we should, and it should be our utmost concern to use that as a very absolute last resort. I do not want to see eminent domain being used to acquire the airport. I think, as long as good conversations happen with the owners and good education happens with our community, I think a lot of the airport has been misconstrued. The whole 600 acres, yeah, it's going to be a 600-acre complex. It does not mean that it's going to be 600 acres of concrete. We have to own that, for the crash runway and everything like that. But, the farmers, like the Oski Airport, I forget how many acres that is, there's farmland out there, And so we're not going to bury the whole thing under 600 acres of concrete. And I understand, it's people's ground. I fully understand it's a heritage issue. I've had this, it's a generation farm, a century farm. Yes, I fully understand that. That's why I'm saying, I don't want to go in and be, knock, knock, we're the government, we're just going to take it from you. I want there to be that conversation, and a repeated conversation, and get good information out there. I think that's where the city has kind of failed on, they're just kind of like, oh, nope, we're going to do it, but they're not saying why, and they're not really driving that point home. There needs to be a lot more communication done, and you're not going to get 100% buy-in on the airport. You never will. But I hope that, like the 163 project, when it came through, there was a lot of farmers that were utterly mad about that project. But now they understand, and from what I've heard, now they understand that, hey, that was a great project to come through because it's increasing traffic. It makes it easier for everything to go through. Will, I benefit from the airport? I doubt it. I'm not probably going to hop on a private jet and go somewhere. But I think it's just one more tool in our toolbox that we can have for our community.
And you kind of touched on the discourse between city and county a little bit. The last two projects that we spoke about, one was, the 1 cent sales tax was a division between city and, or again, as a division between city and rural. And many would say that the relationship between the county and the city is very strained. So how would you work to mend those fences?
Talk. That's straight what it is. It's not, I'm going to wave my flag until you accept my flag. It's sitting down and having informal conversations and formal conversations with both parties. Bring in the landowners that are affected, bring in the supervisors, bring in the council of both cities, and have those informal, almost like a town hall meeting, and get the good questions asked. Don't do the whitewashed questions. Put people on the hot seat. Put your elected officials on the hot seat. Why do we need this? What benefit is it going to have? And hopefully, through doing all of that, you can go through and show the benefits of that project. The rec center, I can see both sides of the fence because we wanted to use it for roads and everything like that. But, a lot of the county residents will use it, and it was their choice not to vote for it. But, they're still going to use it. Because hopefully they use it. Let me put it that way. Hopefully they use it because it's a local amenity, and they don't have to drive 30 minutes to go, to an indoor pool during the winter months. But it really comes down to building up the relationships and not just go, I'm with Oskaloosa and I'm with Mahaska County, I'm never going to talk to you. You've got to be willing to step across that line and just talk to them. And I think that'll start helping immensely.
The codes are something that you work with every day and have been a part of this discussion as far as council members running for office this time around. So the word is, I mean, people have discussed that the codes are preventing people from investing in our community, that they are not building buildings here, residential businesses aren't coming here. If you were on the council in your previous experience, what would you do? Is it a problem? And if it is or isn't, is there a solution or not a solution?
That's a really loaded question. It's a really good question, though. Based off of what I can see, we've been maintaining consistent numbers, what we've been building. And, you know, when I was doing the annual reports and stuff like that, I mean, you're talking over $1 million in residential construction every year in Oski, which is phenomenal. When it comes, you know, the things that I would really look at are, you know, we have our municipal code that we have adopted that was kind of like a cookie cutter code that we bought from a company and that we modified slightly. I don't think it was fully gone through because there's a lot of contradicting codes in there. You know, one code says this, the other code says this, and that could have been because someone modified this and didn't know about this. And there's a lot of that in our municipal code. On top of the municipal code, you've got the International Residential Code, the International Mechanical Code, which is adopted by the state of Iowa now, the Uniform Plumbing Code, which is the state of Iowa code. Those two we have to follow by the state of Iowa. We can make it more stringent, not less stringent. Those are Iowa codes. The electrical code is also an Iowa code, it's a state code. We can make it more stringent, but not less stringent. And then we have the International Commercial Building Code, the IBC. And in those codes, we can modify stuff, and we have. You know, the IRC, the International Residential Code, the sprinkler provisions were taken out by the council. And a lot of communities, you know, when I was with a member, it was called IABO, Iowa Association of Building Officials. So we would meet, you know, every other month, and we would discuss things, and once a year we'd have a big conference, and you'd get all the building officials and code enforcers that were a member of this group. I mean, you're talking 60, 70 building officials throughout Iowa that were talking about this. And you'd have the state fire marshals in there as well. And you'd have the private contractors like Veenstra and Kim and Safe Building that, you know, we've contracted with in the city talking about the fire codes. I mean, the codes go back down to safety, and it should be bare minimum safety. You build the code, you know, everyone's, you know, I always kind of laughed, and people finally, I think, caught on to what I was saying, is, you know, they were touting, no, I built the code. Great, you got a D-. You barely, I mean, the code is the absolute bare minimum safety. Are there some overarching things in the code? Absolutely. I think some of the fire code was a little bit overarching, and most of the communities, you know, especially in Des Moines and stuff like that, have modified, you know, to suit their city. And I think the neat thing about the international codes is that it gives the contractors coming into this community the same footing to go into Des Moines or to any other community around us. They should be able, I mean, there's some codes that are open to interpretation. There always are. But with attending those conferences, I was able to learn what this city, how they were interpreting it, how they were interpreting it. We were able to have that conversation, and, you know, I would meet locally with the Pella building official and with the Newton building official. There's one other one. The Knoxville building official. I'd meet with all three of those. You know, every couple of months we'd sit down for lunch, and because we shared a lot of the same contractors. And what are you seeing? And the goal of that wasn't to, you know, bust down our contractors. It was, hey, this contractor's doing this over in our community. This is how I interpreted this code. He asked this question. So that way we can have a consensus about, you know, so that way when the contractor comes in, that typically works in Pella, and then they come into Oski, there's a lot of difference between our two communities. They're currently working on updating their codes because we are more up to date on what we enforce. But a lot of the stuff we do is shared. And I think that's the neat thing about the International Residential Code and the International Building Code. I think that we need to full-on look at the codes and figure out, is there something that we're running into time after time after time that we're getting complaints about? If so, we need to sit down, we need to go to our Building Code Board of Appeals. We need to go to our boards and commissions and to our council, and we need to have discussions about this. Do we need to modify it to make it better? Absolutely. As far as some of our other policies, I mean, some of them are policies and some of them are codes that hinder development in my mind. The one that bugs me the most is subdivisions. When a contractor wants to come into town and they want to build a subdivision, like Arbor Trace or Fox Run, when they come in, they're on the foot for all the roads, all the sewer, all the water. But they have to install it and have it inspected just as if we, the city, were doing it. And they have to foot the bill for all of it, and there's no help for them. I mean, there might be some TIF money here or there for it, but that's a large upfront cost. But at the end of it, we take it over, and then we charge them to use it. I think that there needs to be a policy change on that, because currently there's a policy within water and wastewater, no new mains. They'll repair what we have, but we're not going to install any new mains. Well, that hinders development right there. We need to look at, can we partner up with, hey, do we know that a subdivision's coming into town? Can we partner up with them and give them the supplies or help them with the engineering or help them with the inspection on it, so that way we can limit their cost down? And I think that'll help spur a little bit more development. And then, going back to the municipal code that we have adopted, our municipal code, there are sections in there that are just junk, that just absolutely need to be taken out. There are sections that need to be added or modified. One that I would love to go back to is called use of existing lots of record. City of Oskaloosa was based on lots that were 60 by 120. Well, the new code that came into place in the year 2000, the municipal code, along with the zoning code, said, hey, your lot has to be 70 foot wide. Well, that eliminates, I think it was, lots in town that no longer met that criteria. Well, there was an interpretation matter we had in our code use of existing lots of record, which is kind of like your golden bullet. It said, hey, you know what? Before this code got adopted in the year 2000, your lot was legally conforming. You're good to go. And you can continue to build on that because you're not going to get land. You're landlocked. That got taken out of our code because of an interpretation matter on the legal side of it. And it never got put back in. So now, anytime anyone tears down a house in one of our older divisions of town, which is, upwards of, 6,000 lots could be affected by this, they have to go pay $100 and go to the Board of Adjustment. And that's a month-and-a-half process, typically. You have to wait until the last, part of the month. And I'm not saying that procedure is bad. I'm saying that, when you look at the Board of Adjustment, they're saying, they're also called a ZBA, the Zoning Board of Adjustment. If you're seeing a variance come in time after time after time, and it's the same variance, change the code. Because it's silly to have to stop development when we know that we're going to approve this variance. Because it's going to go through every time, because it's a 60 by 120 lot, 7,200 square foot, it's going to go through, but you have to jump through all these hoops. Well, why can't we put that use of existing lots of record back in there and use that as a tool to help spur some redevelopment? It's $100. It's not a big fee by any means, but it's one more hoop, one more stretch of red tape that someone has to go through. And I think we need to carefully talk to our contractors. Talk to the ones that are currently building in town, and then find the ones that no longer are building in town, that are the ones that are out there saying, oh, Oski sucks to build in. Go talk to them. What about Oski sucks for you to build in? Is it something that we can modify? And then bring that back and say, hey, you know what, we're hearing this, let's modify it. Let's bring these contractors back into town, let's spur some redevelopment. I think it's great seeing some of these old, cruddy, abandoned houses getting torn down, and you're getting brand new houses put back on the tax rolls. And it's, I called it planting the seed. You have one house that gets completely redone, either an owner occupied, they repaint it, or, it gets completely rebuilt. And then all of a sudden the neighbor goes, you get the Jones effect. Well, I want what Mr. Jones has down the road. And, and they go with that aspect of it. So it starts spreading out. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement, but I think that, once again, it goes back to a lot of communication that has to happen with our contractors that we currently have and the ones that have left our community.
All right. And as a young person and a person that wants to be on the council, it takes vision, and sometimes it's a long-term vision. What would be your vision for Oskaloosa for 10 years down the road, 25 years down the road? I mean, we have projects that are starting to come to the bubble to the top now, because of long-term vision. So what would those be for you?
I think your top one has to be your infrastructure. I touched on it. Our sewer system was installed 150 years ago, and it was installed great. And it was installed with future expansion in mind. So there's a lot of T's and stuff like that in our sanitary system that were plugged with oak plugs. Oak does not last over 150 years. It is starting to fail. And that's why you're starting to see sinkholes. And I think there needs to be more ownership on our side of our own infrastructure. We're really quick to jump to the term of it's private. You have a private main. Okay, if you have 20 houses tied onto it, and we're just using that term because we don't want to spend the money to fix it, that's not right. When I lived over on Penn Boulevard, there was, I believe, 13 or 14 of us tied onto what was considered a private main. And we were responsible for anything that happened to that within the city limits of Oski. We were charged for it when it got down to there, but they wouldn't come in and repair any aspect of it. The infrastructure has to be number one, and that's going to be a 20, 30-year vision. My ultimate goal would be to get rid of the seal coat program. I want to see less and less seal coat. Your pea gravel and tar. That's a 5-year road, 5 years, and it has to be redone. And my road, I live on a dead end road, and there's 10 houses on there. It's concrete currently, and it's crap. It was the sub base is junk, and there's no drainage on it, and that's what really took out my road. And the solution that was presented was, well, we'll just tear that out, and we'll mill and grind it. We'll seal coat it. That does not solve the contributing factor. My road does take farm vehicles. It takes semis. It takes the combines and stuff like that. So that 5-year road is going to be like a 3-year road now. So every 3 years, they're going to have to come back in and spend the money and the labor and the man hours to take it back in instead of correcting the root cause. And that's what we really need to get back down to. We're so focused on doing spot fixes, the instant gratification. Right now, we're going to fix it. Hooray for us. We're the government. We helped you. I think that's a little bit of a joke. There's going to be some ticked off people because it's going to take longer for their road to get done. But their end result is, hey, we're not going to have to touch this road for 20, 30 years down the road. Most people probably aren't going to be there anymore at 20, 30 years, but it's going to help that next group that comes in. And I think it's going to have, that butterfly effect. It's just going to keep going and going and going. But we have to take a stand, and we have to start standing up to correct some of these infrastructure issues.
Okay. We can tell you're definitely passionate about it.
Oh, yes. It bugs me.
Yes. And we're going to kind of start to wind down a little bit here and ask you if there's any topics that I haven't touched upon that you yourself would have liked to have as part of this interview.
You caught me off guard, Ken. I think one of the things that I would like to touch on is the culture of our city government and the retention of our employees and the treatment of our employees. Having worked for the city for 2.5 years, the city only employs 30 to 40 people, which is not a large organization by any means. And we're a small town. But there is such a disconnect between staff and management and council. There are walls put up all the way. staff is strongly discouraged from going to council. And I get part of that with the chain of command. But at the same point in time, we're a community of, less than 12,000. We're neighbors. And I should be able to have a conversation with a councilman when I'm on staff about something that I'm seeing. And I shouldn't have to email the city manager to get permission to talk to this council member, or I shouldn't have to, if a council member calls me, I shouldn't have to email the city manager and say, hey, I talked to council member such and such, this is what we talked about, this is what I said. There needs to be a level of trust between our management and our staff. And I think that's, we need to start treating it more of a family atmosphere. I mean, like I said, there's only 30 to 40 employees here. And everyone is so departmentalized that, there's not a lot of stuff reaching out across the borders. I mean, the staff works great together. They really do. But when it comes to management of our community, I think that's where there needs to be a culture shift. We need to start embracing our employees, and by embracing our employees, we're going to get better outreach to our community. So I think it starts from the top down. I think it starts from council, down to city manager, and down to the supervisors. And then I think if you get that trickle effect down, I think you're going to see better community relations between our employees and the staff. Whether it be the police department or the fire department or, public works. I mean, these guys bust their butts, but at the same point in time, they're not really appreciated by our management. And that's one thing that really kind of disappointed me a little bit.
Okay. And the last question is why should people vote for you?
That's a really good question. And I thought about that. Tom and Scotty are great people. They really are. My relationship with them was, one, I ran against them 4 years ago during the whole airport debacle. But I knew them before then, and that's my neat aspect with that. Tom was my boss when I worked at Cunningham. He was my direct supervisor. So he's a great guy. He's very business-minded. Scotty was my teacher in high school. I had her as a peer helping teacher. She's a wonderful person. But why am I asking for your vote over, voting for them is, we're staying on the same consistent path. And my personal motto is consistency kills, or complacency kills. Sorry, not consistency. I love consistency. Complacency kills. And we're just kind of trudging along. Yep, we're just going to keep doing this, keep doing this, keep doing this. I think it's time for a little bit of a shakeup and get a little bit of a fresh perspective on the council. Get a little bit of a younger perspective. Charlie, he's a great candidate too. And I think Charlie and I bring, a younger perspective. I have a family, that I have a 7-year-old kid and a 2-year-old daughter. I'm looking for that family atmosphere in this community. We do a lot of fun stuff. We have Sweet Corn Serenade, and we have all the stuff cool downtown. And if you step back and just kind of let yourself soak into that moment for a second, you go, wow, this is Oskaloosa. This is what small town living is about. We're able to shut down streets and have fun with it. I want to do more of that. I want to be able to have more of that younger perspective for our community and hopefully spur a little bit more growth and bring in younger people and sustain the younger environment in our community.
All right. Anything else?
No, thank you.